Don't trust what we in the biz call the guessometer, that little indicator on your driver display that says, hey, you've got X miles of range before you're going to have to pull over and charge. Even though the algorithm they're using to determine what your range is going to be has improved greatly over the last 3 years, it's still not perfect and it's not a mind reader. So let's talk about why you should only use this as a point of reference and not the gospel. Back in 2022, when I first got my Ioniq 5, the guessometer or range estimate was pretty bad. It was based on the last 2 weeks of driving history. So for 1 week, you could have been doing low speed driving around town, 25, 35 miles per hour. And that data that it's collecting is saying, wow, he's driving very efficiently. And then the next week, you go on a road trip, you're doing 75, 80 miles per hour. Before you head out, you get in the car and you look at your range and you say, wow, I can do 320 miles between charging stops. That is really crazy. And then you start driving and you see those miles start ticking down. And you're going to realize really quick, I ain't going to be going 320 miles at 75, 80 miles per hour, especially in the wintertime. So this number is taking in all sorts of points of information using an algorithm to determine what your estimated range will be. And most of it comes down to what your average efficiency is while you're driving, which correlates to your speed, and climate control. Climate control is going to be the next biggest drain on your car's battery. So if it's cold out and you're running the heating system, and then if you're DC fast charging and you're preconditioning the battery, that's going to be a huge draw on your battery pack. We're talking like possibly over 10% of the usage. Now, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but recently in the last year and a half or two, they did issue an update to this algorithm for estimating range. Instead of the last 2 weeks of driving data, it's now only using the last week. So it's going to be a much more smaller sample size of the driving habits that you have. I've noticed that my range estimates are far more accurate since they implemented this change. I think most of you would probably agree with me who've been driving these cars for some time. So the guessometer is typically really accurate if you're doing a lot of the same type of driving, whether your commute is all highway, whether your commute is all side roads. It's really good at determining what your range is going to be because it's just going to say, okay, every day his efficiency is 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. We don't really have to tweak much there. It's pretty consistent. Obviously, where it gets challenging is when you throw in a 80 mile per hour highway run for a few hundred miles and then you go back to driving slower. But once you've been driving these cars for any amount of time, you kind of get used to these things. You know what to expect. Back when I was driving my 2022 Ioniq 5, when it had the algorithm that was taking the last 2 weeks of data, if I was doing a road trip and I did multiple charging stops over a few days, I would almost always charge at least 50, 60, 70 miles more than the guessometer told me I needed to get to my next charging stop. And then when I would get back on the road, I would watch those miles just start dropping and dropping and dropping, and the distance to the next charger and what was remaining in the battery pack would get closer and closer and closer. So it just ate up that buffer that I had put into it. And I can say that problem really doesn't exist anymore. I drove back from New Jersey with my Ioniq 6 yesterday, and the guessometer was almost dead accurate. I didn't see any major gap between what it was estimating and what I was supposed to arrive at the next charger with. So that was really reassuring, but I have been feeding that algorithm a lot of good data because I've been mostly consistently doing highway driving in the Ioniq 6, so that's the data it's going off. When I'm on a road trip or driving somewhere where I'm going to have to do multiple charging stops, I'm not really basing all of my information off of the guessometer. Typically, I'll plug in an OBD2 device and I'll monitor the battery capacity that way. And then I'll just multiply the remaining energy by my efficiency at that point in time to kind of understand how much further I can go on that state of charge. So for the pre-refresh Ioniq 5, EV6, GV60, Ioniq 6, all those cars are 74 kilowatt hours or so. There is a 3 kilowatt hour buffer at the top. So if you're going to multiply your efficiency times the battery capacity, I'd recommend going with like 73, 74. If you want to be a little bit more conservative, you could do like 71, 72. You might have some battery degradation, so you want to take that into account. So multiply your efficiency times that number. That'll give you your 100% to 0% range if you were doing that. I did a whole video on how you can use an OBD2 scanner with your car. It's really nice now because you can pull it up on CarPlay or Android Auto and see all this information directly on the infotainment screen instead of having to look at your phone. I'll leave a link in the description to that video if you're interested. I'd say probably one of the biggest thing that catches people off guard is kind of these shoulder seasons, spring and fall, mostly fall, because when the temperatures start dropping and you're running the heater, the algorithm of the car doesn't have any of this information. Like if you did a drive the day before when it was 75, 80 degrees out, and then the next day you're driving in the morning and it's 50, 55 degrees out, you're running the heat most likely, it's going to really throw the algorithm for a loop. So you're going to really want to be a little bit more cognizant of what your overall range is on these kinds of days. When you are doing a road trip or something, you are going to have worse efficiency. You're going to have lower range. Now, a new feature that Hyundai implemented into the software for the 2025 Ioniq 5 is this range history kind of screen. And when I first got the car, I had no idea what information this was trying to get across to the driver. And now that I've done a bunch of road tripping, I now kind of understand what it is. So Hyundai is showing you a graph, and on the x-axis, it's odometer in miles, and then on the y-axis, it's distance to empty in miles. So the y-axis is what the car is estimating your highest possible range to be. And the odometer on the x-axis is basically how far you've actually driven since you turned on the car and shifted into drive. This does reset every time you power the car back on, which is kind of annoying. I feel like it should kind of retain that information. So you can see the little bars at the bottom correlate to drivetrain, electronics, climate, and battery care usage. And those are represented with the various colors on those bars. To me, that's not super useful. They're so small. You're really just getting kind of a little bit of a picture of what is happening. What we're really interested in are those two diverging lines. So basically what we're looking at is a straight line from 293 miles to 0 miles of estimated range. That would be just a fixed efficiency down to 0. I'm not sure what it's using for that. I'm assuming that it is the average efficiency over the last week of driving, but I don't know for sure. This would actually be a good one to talk to Hyundai Engineering about. But anyway, the line below, the jagged one, that is reality. So that is what your actual efficiency is. You can see from the second I started driving on this particular drive, it just plummeted, just straight down. You can see it kind of started to level out into a more straight line, basically down to the point where I stopped this drive at about 155, 160 miles or so. But my point here is that the distance to empty was not accurate because I was doing high-speed driving. My efficiency wasn't what it predicted, so that's why those lines are kind of diverging from each other. So in reality, on my 2025 Ioniq 5, I can do about 230, 240, maybe 250 if I slow my speed down a little bit of highway driving. I knew going into this, there was no way I was going to hit 293. The reason it was likely 293 is I was probably puttering around town here doing 30 miles per hour for the last few days. Here is another example of that graph. You can see for a brief second, I actually exceeded its estimate, but then it quickly dropped below that line. So to get there, all you're going to do is hit EV, click on the little graph down below, EV range history, and that will take you to this screen. I just got in the car and powered it on, so there's nothing to show, but once you start driving, this will automatically adjust. Now, another nice feature of the 2025 Ioniq 5, EV6, Ioniq 9, EV9, all the newer cars with CCNC, they give you a high range estimate as well as a low range estimate. So it's kind of giving you this margin of error where you're definitely going to be able to go. So if you want to err on the side of caution, definitely use that lower number as your point where you would want to stop and recharge. So I just wanted to get this information out there. I know a lot of people are new to EVs. A lot of first-time EV owners are getting into the 2025 Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 9, the 2025 Kia EV6. So I really wanted to just let you know, don't trust the guessometer. but it has improved greatly, so it's still a good rough estimate. So anyway, guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Check out my store at ioniqguy.com for all sorts of accessories for every Hyundai, Kia, Genesis EV. Consider becoming a channel member for as little as 99 cents per month. For $3 per month, you can get early access to all my videos as well as a 5% discount to my store. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.